Before we get into today's video, if you're new, you like the NBA, high school, college, really if you love basketball in general, and you're unsubscribed, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell below. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so liking it and subscribing would help. Also, feel free to leave any sort of feedback or really any comment about suggesting a video, constructive criticism, comment anything. Because the more interactions my videos get from likes and comments, the more YouTube will recommend it. I know that sounds selfish, but that's just how these things work. But with that being said, let's get into my third edition of my 2020 NBA mock draft. With the first overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft, I have the Golden State Warriors selecting ONEYKA Okongwu, the power forward / center out of USC. He stands at 6'9", and weighs 245 pounds. Now, when you look at Golden State, you look at their roster. When healthy, this is a playoff team. This is a team that's probably anywhere between the second and the fourth seed. When all healthy, they wouldn't be in this position without injuries to Clay and Steph, obviously. So, this is a rare opportunity they have. And when you look at the roster, you got Steph, he's your point guard. You're not going to try to find a replacement this early, in my opinion. You have Clay, you just gave him a contract. You have Andrew Wiggins. Say what you want, he's really talented. And if his job is really only to be a scorer for Golden State, I think he could fit that mold really perfectly. We'll see what happens with Draymond Green. He got caught up with some stuff about liking some tweets, and the way there's just certain things that make me wonder if he's going to be on Golden State next season. But I think ONEYKA Okongwu was the best big man in this draft, and it's by a decent margin in my opinion. He has great defensive versatility. He's really athletic. Again, isn't necessarily a great offensive player, but he did average around 16 points per game at USC this year. So around 72% from the line on 5.1 attempts. So he does have some shooting potential and some offensive potential, but more will be a pick and roll, catch lobs, run the rim kind of guy, which is really all they need in Golden State. Personally, they would trade this pick down, but we aren't doing trade downs in this mock draft. But I do think, they don't need a center to win, but it wouldn't help. Well, not help, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to have like ONEYKA Okongwu, who can impact the game somewhat with scoring, could give you 15 to 20 points on a given night, but could also score 0 points and have a massive positive impact on winning. So again, I just think this is the best player available that fits a need, and I think the Warriors would take him. I know there's reports about Anthony Edwards, but this is what I would do if I was in the Warriors' position. And I think taking ONEYKA Okongwu is the best thing to do. With the second overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft, I had the Cleveland Cavaliers selecting Anthony Edwards, the freshman shooting guard out of Georgia, 6'5", 225 pounds. In my opinion, the best player in this draft. And of course, the thing that always stands out to me is his physicality. I said it in the video I made about him, where I said, listen, he is just so physically built to play basketball, and he has the body of an NBA player at his position in his prime, and he's only 18. He's one of the youngest players in the upcoming draft. Extremely good shot creator. I think a lot of his problems have to do with his decision making more than it does his skill set. I think his inefficiency isn't due to the fact that he's a bad shooter, more than it has to do with his shot selection and the fact that he really was the only option on Georgia this year. He was constantly dealing with multiple defenders and things like that. Teams were game planned against him, so he didn't have necessarily as much opportunity as he would on a blue blood. But I really think he has so much talent. He does need to work on not settling for mid-range jump shots when he could drive to the paint. He's physically bigger and stronger than a lot of people, if not every shooting guard in college basketball. And he'll be physically bigger and stronger than a lot of shooting guards in basketball by the time he enters the NBA. The moment he enters the NBA, he'll be one of the most physically gifted shooting guards in the league. So I think he needs to use that to his advantage a bit more. Now, his fit with guys like Collin Sexton, Darius Garland, Kevin Porter Jr., I think what you need to do is this. I think you need to stagger the minutes somehow and have one of them come off the bench between Kevin Porter Jr., Darius Garland, and Collin Sexton. I would lean towards either Garland or Kevin Porter Jr. coming off the bench. I think that, it would be hard for Cleveland to bring Sexton off the bench because of how well he's been playing. But I think that you lean more towards having Kevin Porter Jr. maybe come off the bench, but you somehow stagger the minutes. But I know the fit isn't good with Sexton or even Garland sometimes. And the more I think about it, the more iffy that whole fit is. But at the same time, I think Cleveland isn't in a position to pass on talent. I said this for the 2019 draft. I had them taking Cam Reddish, who I believe was the 4th best player in that draft. And I said, you can't pass on talent. You can't worry about position. You can't worry about anything like that. You just have to take the best player available that has the most potential to just build an identity. And I think Anthony Edwards can be that player that you can kind of build an identity around, because right now Cleveland does not have an identity. With the 6th overall pick, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting LaMelo Ball, point guard for the Atlanta Hawks of the NBL, 6'7", 190 pounds. Probably the youngest player in this draft, honestly. In my opinion, in a 1A, 1B with Anthony Edwards for the number 1 player in this draft, I think he has the most potential out of anyone in this draft. And, the fit is weird with Minnesota in a way because of the D'Angelo Russell, Jared Culver's there, obviously, although I'm not that high on Jared Culver, to be honest with you. But I do like LaMelo Ball because I feel like he's underrated as an off-ball player. Robel brought this up in a video. I'll put the link to Robel's video about this in the description below. But he can be a good cutter, and as he improves as a shooter, he'll be a good off-ball player. But he's also a player that is a scorer and a passer, something that, they really could use in Minnesota, obviously. The best player for them is ONEYKA Okongwu, but Okongwu's gone. He went number 1 overall in my mock draft. So I think they're at that point as his best player available. I would consider Isaac Okoro here because of the defense. They kind of do really need defense. And LaMelo Ball, that team's just going to be horrible defensively. Hopefully they can find some other guys that they could maybe later in the draft through free agency, whatever, to improve that defense. But I think that Minnesota, if you take Okoro over LaMelo, I think that's something that you would regret for the next maybe 10 years, because I think you're passing on a potential superstar. You pass on LaMelo. That's why I haven't taken him. You can stagger his minutes with D-Law, make sure that they aren't always on the court at the same time. He's also a player that can, people don't talk about it enough with him because of people talk about the 92-point game and his scoring ability and this like that. But LaMelo Ball is the most gifted passer in the draft. He'll be one of the most gifted passers the moment he steps into the league. So he could be a guy that could really score 5 points and have 12 assists, have a positive impact. Or he could be a guy that gives you 30 and 5 and have a positive impact. There's a lot of upside with LaMelo. Will he reach it? I don't know if he'll reach his ceiling, because I think he's the only player in this draft with superstar potential. But I do think that the chances of him reaching that superstar potential aren't necessarily high. I can comfortably be confident that he has a chance to be an all-star level player, though. And I think Minnesota could use that. I think that this has a chance to be an upgrade over D'Angelo Russell. And I know people like D'Angelo Russell, but he doesn't have the kind of potential that LaMelo has. With the 4th pick, I have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Isaac Okoro, the small forward out of Auburn. His calling card is obviously defense. He is athletic. He has good size for this position, 6'6", 225 pounds. And Atlanta, they don't need more offense. Let's be honest with ourselves. I've seen some people have Deni as Avdija going here. I could see it, kind of, but they don't really need more offense. They drafted DeAndre Hunter, who's defensively minded. I don't know much about him. They drafted Cam Reddish, who was more offensive minded. Actually, he's been a pretty good defender this year. Cam Reddish has been. I think he has a lot of potential. And Isaac Okoro, this is an interesting pick because, I believe that they'll trade this pick. But I'm not doing trades in this mock draft. They're stuck. They have to pick someone. And you have Trae Young. You don't need a point guard, obviously. You have Kevin Huerter. You have Cam Reddish as probably your two guards. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, that's probably your three. John Collins is probably your four. You just traded for Clint Capella. So I don't think taking James Wiseman would be a good idea because I don't know if James Wiseman will even be as good as Clint Capella. But I think Okoro, you just drafted him to be a guy that comes off the bench in a Marcus Smart kind of role. And he plays great defense, can defend multiple positions. And, that's really the selling point on him. He's young too. He's only 19. He just turned 19 this year. So when you get him, he's going to be a young player, defensive-minded guy. Doesn't need to score. Needs to improve offensively. Not a great three-point shooter. Not a good free throw shooter. Took 4.7 attempts from the line. It's at 67.4% from there. He isn't a lost cause on offense. This isn't like Andre Roberson, where it's like dude's just a non-factor on offense. Like even like a Frank Ntilikina, where the guy says nothing on offense. He has offensive tools, but they are much. His offensive tools are very similar to like Justice Winslow. But I do think he has more defensive potential than Justice Winslow ever had. And the thing is, this isn't about like how this is just goes to show like how kind of weak this draft class is, because a guy like this would be going in like the 10 to 15 range in most drafts, but this draft isn't really strong. And for a team that needs to pick based off need, they don't really need to take best player available because a lot of the best available players are redundant picks. Like, that just goes to show that a guy like this is going that high about kind of really how weak this draft class is. I think I like Isaac Okoro, but I don't like him in most drafts going at number 4. But considering how weak this draft is, I think that it's okay that he goes 4th overall. And I think this, if he becomes like a Marcus Smart kind of player, remember, Boston got Marcus Smart at like 6. So, like, and I think that they would take him at 6 again. And I think considering how weak this draft class is, I don't think that you can really feel like you would regret anything taking like a defensive-minded guy like this at number 4. With the 5th overall pick in 2020 NBA Draft, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting Tyrese Maxey, the shooting guard, 6'3", 198 pounds, out of Kentucky, freshman. A bit of surprise for some people probably. I like Tyrese Maxey a lot. I actually think that he's like the 4th best player in this draft. But there's actually a significant drop off after those top 3 guys. I sort of mentioned it in the 4th pick, but like I'll mention it now. There was a significant drop off after those first 3 guys, in my opinion. And Tyrese Maxey is an interesting player. He plays well, and he plays at his best against the best competition and when the lights are the brightest. He's a horrible 3-point shooter. Only shoots like 29.2% from 3 on 3.6 attempts. It's a decent 3-point shoot. It's a free throw shooter at 88.3%, but only takes 3.9 of them. Shoots 42% from the field overall. Averages 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. There are concerns, but I do feel like he's a guy that isn't just really good offensively as a scorer. He's also really good defensively. And he's a guy that kind of prides himself off that as well. He really does pride himself off being a defensive kind of guy. He does have lapses at times, but I think he's really good defensively. At least when I watched him play. And he has some amazing games. he had a really good game to start the year off against Michigan State, where he had 26 points, shot 7 for 12 from the field, went 9 for 10 from the line. He had a good game against Louisville, where he had 27 points, 9 for 14 from the field. He had a really good game against Vanderbilt. We had 10 for 17, 25 points. So he has a bunch of good games, sprinkled in with bad games. He is a bit streaky when it comes to scoring, but again, I'm really high on him. I've seen people have him going like 15, like outside right. If he falls out of the lottery, it's a steal. Maybe I have him going a bit too high, but again, I really just like the idea of a guy who has a lot of scoring potential to be like a 15 to 18 point per game scorer, gives you around like 4 to 5 assists, gives you like 4 rebounds, and plays really good defense. I think that's his ceiling. And if you can get that at that 5th pick, I think that's a really good value. And again, for a player that I'm higher on the most, it seems also that a lot of like the Twitter scouts, I'm not gonna say Twitter scouts that I happen to know because I follow them on Twitter is a better way to put it, have him really high on him as well. But I really think that again, it's the best player available situation. Detroit is in a position to take best player available, and I think at this point in the draft, Tyrese Maxey is the best player available. With the 6th overall pick, I have the New York Knicks selecting Killian Hayes, the point guard. He's from France. Actually, was born in Florida, but he is French. 6'5", 187 pounds, point guard, shooting guard type. And the first thing you notice with him is he kind of does fit that mold of what you look for in a modern day point guard. Can pass a little bit, but is more of a scorer. Per 36 this year, which I do use per 36 stats for European players because a lot of European players, they don't get a lot of minutes because they're young. It's just not how it works. Like in college, like players that are young, they'll get minutes. But in the Euro leagues and things like that, they won't get those type of minutes. But per 36, 16.8 points a game, 4.1 rebounds a game, 7.8 assists per game, 48.2% field goal shooting. Doesn't shoot well from 3, so only 29.4% from 3, and 87.6% from the line, which is a telling sign that he can develop into a good shooter. He actually doesn't even take that many threes a game. His regular per game 3-point stats are 3.1 attempts. So I do think with more volume, he could become a better 3-point shooter. Especially based off how efficient of a player he already is, from his overall field goal percentage to his free throw percentage. And I've heard a lot of D'Angelo Russell comparisons. I think that's a solid comparison. I think he's a bit more efficient of a player than D'Angelo Russell ever will be. I think he projects to be that a bit more. I think that this is probably the best point guard you could put next to RJ Barrett because of the fact that he can play the point guard and the shooting guard spot. So he's kind of a combo guard. He's very well fit to be a true point guard and a scoring guard when RJ's not on the floor. So I think that is probably the right pick. I wouldn't be shocked if they picked Cole Anthony. I like Cole Anthony a lot. I actually think Cole Anthony is like the 6th best player in this draft. He's from New York. But I do think Killian Hayes is a slightly better player. And I also think that he just fits better with what New York looks for in a point guard. He's going to probably start over guys like Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank Ntilikina, which actually isn't really that big of a task to do. But I do feel like this is probably going to be their point guard of the future. And this is finally, I think, a player that could solve the point guard spot they've just been looking for forever. With the 7th overall pick in the 2020 NBA Draft, I have the Chicago Bulls selecting Tyrese Haliburton, the sophomore point guard out of Iowa State. He stands at 6'5", weighs about 175 pounds. Reminds me a lot of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, honestly. Now, if you might be wondering, why would they take a point guard? They just drafted Kobe White this past year. Well, Kobe White didn't start most of the season, and for good reason, obviously. And I think that Tyrese Haliburton would be a better fit next to Zach LaVine. Now, with him, you get, again, like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type of player. A player that can really play in any system, doesn't do anything to take away from other players, can pass, can defend a little bit, can rebound, and overall, this is a guy that seems like he will average like 15, 5, and 5 in this league, which I think would be fine. I'm very skeptical of the Bulls. I don't think they have a player on that roster that could be a franchise player. I think they're gonna have to tank and hope for someone in 2021. I don't think Tyrese Haliburton is a franchise level player, but I do think that he would be able to fit with guys that you look at in 2021, like Jalen Green, Cade Cunningham, Jonathan Kuminga. He really could fit next to any player, and I think that's what you look for in a player at this point. A guy who can put up solid stats, fit with everyone, can pass, defend, rebound, score a little bit. He's a really good three-point shooter. Shot 41.9% from 3 on 5.6 attempts this year, and he projects to be a 37.6% three-point shooter in the NBA, which is really good. So there's a lot to like about him. I don't ever see him becoming like a star or anything, but I do think he will be a solid starter. And I think, Kobe White's a six man. Like, that's just kind of who he is. Like, it's kind of like the player he's gonna be. And I think that getting Tyrese Haliburton to be a steady starter, kind of be what they had in Thomas Satoransky, I think that is something that the Bulls really could use. Because I think that they're gonna need a tank in 2021 to land one of those franchise-changing players from that draft class. With the 8th overall pick, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Deni Avdija from Israel. Small forward, 6'9", 215 pounds. Got some Luka Doncic type hype right around when the draft season for this year started. He's not Luka. Luka is one of the highest prospects I have ever graded. The only guys I think that, like, as prospects I think are comparable to him are like Zion Williamson and Cade Cunningham. Those are the only two. But for Deni Avdija, you get a guy who he kind of reminds you of Hedo Turkoglu. I think you've probably heard that comparison a lot. Doesn't really shoot the three ball that well. Isn't a good free throw shooter. Only shot 52% from the line on 2.9 attempts per 36 minutes. I think he's just going to be a solid player that does have some potential. Doesn't really do anything like overly great. Like, doesn't have a defined skill set, obviously. But I do think that he could just be a solid guy that just does a lot of things well from you, like that Nicholas Batum kind of role. But he's younger, has a little more potential, and isn't being paid as much money as Nick Batum. So I think that's something to think about. He doesn't have as high of a ceiling as some people think he does, in my opinion. I think that I wouldn't take him in my top 3. He's not one of my 3 best players in this draft, obviously. Those 3 guys are in the class of their own. I wouldn't take him top 5 because he doesn't have a defined skill set. Because those teams in the top 5 have players that they need to get that have, like, defined skill sets. But I do think the solo can just take a guy like this. He does have a decent amount of potential. I don't know if he'll ever reach it, but I do think that he's best player available at this point in the draft. Solo's in a position they just can't worry about position. They just gotta take the best player available, because the only players that I really like on the roster are Devontae Graham, PJ Washington, and Miles Bridges. Miles Bridges is obviously a small forward. You look at Devontae Graham, point guard. You look at PJ Washington, power forward. Deni Avdija probably could play shooting guard if needed. But, this is just a best player available kind of case right now, and I think that at this point in the draft, that's what you have to go off of. With the 9th overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft, I have the Washington Wizards selecting James Wiseman, the center out of Memphis. Well, technically out of Memphis. He stands at 7'1", 237 pounds. People are wondering why you have him so low. You know, people think he's going to be the number 1 pick with Golden State. I don't think so. I don't think he's the best big man in this draft. I don't even think that he's a top 5 player in this draft. Do I think he has potential to be something really good in this league, like an all-star big man? I think he does. Will he reach it? That's up to him. You know, he has some skills. He has the size. He has athleticism. He's a good shot blocker. But when I look at his stats and you watch him play, it's not like watching Hassan Whiteside, where it's like, yeah, he'll give you production. He's a guy that can give you like 15 and 12 and 4 blocks. He can do all those things. But does it impact winning basketball? I don't know if he'll be able to do that. There's just so many times he just seems disengaged, out of the game. There are concerns with his motor. His motor runs hot and cold. The reason I have Okongwu ahead of him is because he can do all the things that James Wiseman does and has a much more consistent motor. That's what separates ONEYKA, who in my opinion is the best center in this draft, or big man, and James Wiseman, who I believe is the second best big man in this draft. I do think he has a lot of potential. I think the Wizards could just go best player available. I don't know what's going to happen with Bradley Beal and John Wall. And looking back on this pick, like 10 years down the line, if this is the actual pick, this could be viewed as like a steal. But as of right now, I think it's a justifiable spot that he should go. I think it's actually more of an accurate spot that he should go compared to where other people have him going, like top 3, top 2, top 1. I just think that there's too many concerns about his motor. There isn't enough tape to really justify taking him top 3 or top 5. Given the red flags on him, there isn't enough tape to justify those weaknesses. So that's why I have him going 9th overall. I think he's a good rim runner. If he improves his motor, he could end up being the best player in this draft. But the chances, motor is something you can't teach. You either have it or you don't. And I think that's something that is a gigantic concern. But he's a talented player nonetheless. I'm still talented enough to go top 10 in this draft. But again, I'm just not as high on him as the media is. I just don't think he's worthy of like a top 5 pick. Just based on what we've seen from his EYBL and high school days to the limited amount of college tape that we have, and especially considering that he only played against like one good team, and that was Oregon. With the 10th overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft, I have the Phoenix Suns selecting Cole Anthony, the point guard out of North Carolina, 6'3", 184 pounds. I think he's a lot better than the mainstream media thinks he is, obviously. I mentioned it when I was talking about Killian Hayes. I think Cole Anthony is the 6th best player in this draft. I just don't like his fit with a lot of the teams that are like in his range for his position on the big board. I'm going 10 to Phoenix. I really like the fit next to Devin Booker. I really just think in the modern NBA, you don't need a distributor. You just need a guy who can be a solid enough passer. I think Cole Anthony can be that. I think he would have been a better passer. His assist numbers probably would look a little bit better than they did if he was on a team that allowed him to pass more. He really didn't have anyone to pass to. 18.5 points a game, 5.7 rebounds a game, 4 assists per game. A lot of the stuff about him and what my thoughts on him as a prospect, you can find out in the last video I posted. Where I talked about why I still believe Cole Anthony's a top-level prospect. And my thoughts about Cole Anthony haven't necessarily changed, but my thoughts on other guys going ahead of him have changed. And that's why he's kind of fallen a bit for me. And I had him going 10th overall in my last mock draft as well. And I just really like that fit with Devin Booker. Don't need a distributor as much. Just be a guy that can kind of just get buckets, give you like 5 to 6 assists a night. I think that's what Cole Anthony will be able to do. Give you like 18 points. I think that's a perfect point guard to put next to a guy like Devin Booker. And I think that, Cole's assist numbers aren't everything. De'Aaron Fox didn't put up a lot of assist numbers in college, and he's averaging like 7 assists per game in the league now. So it isn't always the biggest telling sign of how many assists per game, how good of a passer you were. I do think Cole's more of a Jamal Murray, Colin Sexton type, and I think that'd be a good fit with Booker, who's proven he could be a really good playmaker himself. And again, I think at this point in the draft, this is the best value pick in the draft. Getting Cole Anthony at 10, because again, I still think he's one of the better players in this draft. I think he's a top 6 player. And I think there's a legitimate argument for putting him over Killian Hayes as the second point guard, because I personally, though, I think Killian Hayes is slightly better, but not by much. And I was almost really tempted to put Cole Anthony at 6 to New York, and even at 5 to Detroit, but I ended up going against it because I think Tyrese Maxey is a better prospect, personally. For reasons, I don't know, I'm no expert, I don't have to explain myself, but I probably should explain myself. That was a really selfish thing to say, wow. But besides the point, I think this is the best fit, best value. I think Cole Anthony's going to prove a lot of people wrong. I don't think that he's like a guy that's going to fall out of the lottery like some people do. I don't think he's a fall outside the top 10. Like, that's how good I think he is. If he falls out of the top 10, he immediately becomes steal of the draft, in my opinion. But that's all I really got to say about Cole Anthony, guys. You can watch the video on him if you want to hear more of my thoughts. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much. It means so much to me, guys. You guys don't understand. But again, thank you. Like and subscribe if you're new. Feel free to leave feedback in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.